Good evening, everyone. I'm Cameron Pine. I'm here to give my thoughts on Invest 98L. Yes, it is November, and this is why the hurricane season continues throughout the month of November. However, we have a very rare situation on our hands today, and something that will unfold over the coming few days and is a threat to South Florida and the entire Florida East Coast and Southeast. So here's our system right here, currently a few hundred miles north of Puerto Rico. Um, this is what the National Hurricane Center has put out at 8 p.m., basically describing that there's an increasing risk to the coastal communities across Florida and the Southeast, and to anticipate that tropical storm, possibly hurricane conditions are possible later this week, and to continue staying tuned in to further updates from your local National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center. So now let's get into some of the reasons why I'm a little bit increasing concern today about this system. So right here, here's our sprawling 98L, as you can see, spinning in the atmosphere. It doesn't really look like your typical tropical system where you have convection around a center of circulation. You kind of have this comma shape, and that's because it kind of is subtropical in a sense right now as it rotates counterclockwise around an upper level low currently north of Hispaniola. So we can expect to see subtropical characteristics, which is not, don't think of subtropical as in less intense or different than tropical. The impacts are the same. However, this is going to be a very big system. The wind field will definitely be spread out over hundreds of miles. So let me get into more details about the strength possibilities of this system. So one issue of concern is that the sea surface temperature anomalies. This is the difference of what the sea surface temperatures are to what they are on a climatological record. And so these reds and oranges here depict that the current sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic Ocean are currently running higher than normal, about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius, which does make a difference. So just more ocean heat content will only help aid the system in its intensification process as it moves towards the Bahamas and eventually Florida. Additionally, this afternoon, we've seen the 850 millibar vorticity, meaning the spin in the atmosphere, has been on the increase in this general region, which shows that the system is beginning to intensify and to organize itself. What we look for as forecasters is a nice ball of vorticity that's relatively circular. So something like up here is more circular, so that's more defined. But 98L is certainly getting there. Once it sheds a little bit of this vorticity to the southeast and becomes more defined in a circular fashion, is when things could really start going. So now let's look at the American model for intensity forecasting. So the American model is one of our top models. So we definitely want to take into consideration when we're doing forecasts. This is 6 hours out, and this is the vorticity that I just showed you, 850 millibars. And we can see that it's kind of sprung out, not quite circular. You have little pulses here and there with a bit of a tilt. What we want to see is a nice, as I said before, a nice ball of reds and darker colors. So let's continue this a few hours ahead. And we get to about hour 54, which is not that far in the future, about 2 days in the future. And we finally see this very large system, but it has a concentration. And as you can see, it moves pretty far north as it rotates around this upper level low. However, once it gets around the low, it has a blocking ridge to the north, which is going to shunt any more motion to the north, and it's going to force everything west and actually south of west as it rotates around the low. And we get in this region around Grand Bahama where things are definitely interesting in terms of development. It's a region of very low wind shear once we get in this area. So we might go from subtropical characteristics to more tropical characteristics. So if I show you the wind field of the storm, what we see once it gets in this general region is our strongest winds are centered around the RMW, which is the radius of maximum winds, which is what we usually see in a tropical system. And it narrowly gets close to the coast and comes in right around Jupiter as a overall relatively well-defined category one-ish hurricane, which is certainly nothing to play around with. So this is definitely a very serious situation if this scenario unfolds. This is the GFS model. And then the GFS ensembles, excuse me, are relatively centered. This is the European star. Here's the GFS. You can see that the ensembles, which is basically they change a little bit of the physics. They run it a bunch of times, and you get these different scenarios that kind of highlight the uncertainty in a forecast. And what we see is there's not a lot of uncertainty. Most of the low pressure systems that the model is depicting in all their scenarios are right centered around South Florida or the Treasure Coast as a strong tropical storm or a category 1 hurricane. So this is definitely a scenario that there's increasing confidence in. And it's only a few days out. This is about Thursday morning, Wednesday night. So preparations will need to be started quite soon. Now let's look at the European model, which is another one of our top models. We can see that sprawling ball of vorticity. It's not quite defined. We go out a few hours here. Let's get to 56 hours, match up the GFS. You can see it's definitely stronger. It's a very large, expansive system, but not quite as defined. As it approaches the Florida coast, it strengthens here and there, and it turns to a strong tropical storm, moderate tropical storm. Certainly would be some impacts, but the track is relatively similar to what the American model showed. And these are the low pressures of what the ensembles are showing. And it's a little bit further south over Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties as anywhere from a category 1 hurricane to a moderate tropical storm. And this is in the time frame of Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So that's all I really have for tonight. It's a certainly situation that you're going to want to stay tuned in for. One thing I really want to mention is that the storm, most of the damaging winds, the rainfall, and the storm surge threats will be to the north of the center. So if you are in Miami, at the University of Miami, and the storm makes landfall in Fort Lauderdale, the impact might not be so bad. However, if you are in Fort Lauderdale and the storm made landfall south of you, the impact would be worse. So the areas to the north of where the center of circulation makes landfall will certainly have more impact. So that's all I have for tonight. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your evening.